So, hi everybody, I am Sihle, the facilitator of Destination Varsity. Welcome to Destination Varsity Talks, where we talk with people that matter, people who've made it in life. Can you kindly introduce yourself?
Okay, igama lam Sapho Gwadiso. I am a senior lecturer in the College of Accounting in the Commerce faculty at the University of Cape Town. I have been working here since the beginning of 2022, and I was somewhere else before here, but we can get into that.
Okay, nice to know you. I don't know if I should call you senior lecturer or call you. Why did you want me to call you an esteemed lecturer?
I don't know. It's who gets to be called esteemed. I think if you run 200 years, then you might find some people that sit on thrones and want to be called esteemed. But we are all just normal people doing what we trying to do a job and trying to influence the future of others. But definitely not an esteemed lecturer. There's some PhD graduates in the department in the college that don't even want to be called doctors. So esteemed lecturer is a bit much.
Oh, okay, cool. Maybe let's just track back. Where did you maybe grow up? Did you grow up in Cape Town? And how has your journey been, starting from like maybe lower levels all the way to university? As a student, how has your journey been?
Okay, so my background is not sure how short to keep this, but my background is so as an incident of birth, I was actually born in Cape Town, but I grew up always saying that I'm from the Eastern Cape because that's actually where I grew up. So the actual event of birth, I was born in Cape Town, and I think I left before I turned 1 or 2, and I did all of my primary education or basic education in the Eastern Cape. There's some areas around Butterworth. That's where I did most of my. I did grade 1 till grade 8 in a rural school around Butterworth, and then
Can I disturb you in a rural school, but now you're a senior lecturer? How does it correlate? Because people who generally are associated with success, they're generally from Model C schools. And how do you master English from a rural area? I mean, how did you do that?
Look, my journey with language, maybe I'll get to that, but just to finish off the schooling bit. So I did the 8th grades in a very small, I think when I left on my last year in that school, there were 14 of us in class, which is something you don't get in a city. Like, it was a very small classroom because it's a small village. And then when I left there to basically try and be closer to high schools, because there was no high school close to where I was staying, I then went to be sure around King Williamstown, spent 6 months in Tanzania. I spent 1.5 years in a place called Nkuhlu, just outside Butterworth. In terms of my challenge with, I think it mixes with identity. Actually, I had my own challenges around fitting in, whether I would be good enough, whether I would be able to cope with a space like UCT. And it's interesting that you mentioned language, because I think language was one of my biggest challenges coming here. I think through my first 2 years as a student, I had convinced myself that the only thing that I was competent at was actually working with numbers. So I was doing so well in accounting. I did very well in something called statistics and some mathematical related courses. But at some point, I don't know when, something did click by the time I graduated, that I was able to actually accept my, even if they, I don't know how pronounced they are to other people, but for me, I had pronounced very big language deficiencies that I was trying to figure out. And then I was trying to figure out, is it my discomfort because I know where I come from, or is it as a matter of fact that people cannot hear what I'm saying or cannot understand? And so in my first year, mostly in my first year, but also a little bit in my second year when I was here, which was 2005 and 2006, my those courses that were more conceptual and had essays and discussions, I was actually positively telling myself, I'm just gonna get my 50% and get out.
So from aiming for 50% to being a senior lecturer, so did you ever see yourself as a lecturer, like in your early ages, maybe when you're still in primary? What was your biggest dream, and what did you want to become as you were growing up? And when did you realize that actually I'm kind of good with teaching and this is my passion?
Okay, so I'm going to say something that a lot of students are going to get criticized for if they say this, because this normally comes up as a criticism on why we have students that are not passionate or they're not doing well and so on. I came from a background where the learning about different careers that are available out there was not something that we knew about. So you know about doctors and nurses, but I didn't know what a chartered accountant was, which is what I am right now, up until well into grade 11. So what I truly believed in from way back, and I credit my grandmother who was not educated for this, was if I keep working hard, I'm going to get somewhere good. So I think from middle of my just after primary school, that was my thing. Like, if I keep pushing, I'm gonna get somewhere. The next thing that happened was when I got to UCT, and I got here not because I thought UCT was a special university, a special place. I didn't actually even know that much about universities when I came out of high school. But when I came here, it was during my first and second year that I felt that the education journey is transformative. And so there was a value in education itself. And I think by the time I graduated with my accounting degree, I had told myself that even if I'd become, if I'd done medicine or engineering or whatever, I was probably going to go back, to come back and be a lecturer, because I feel like for me that is the thing that is always. I know people say education is the most powerful thing that weapon that you can change the world. Even after that statement, I still think that the value of education is underrated. The extent that a person, despite their background, can transform their own life by spending time with themselves and their books and the pen and the paper, to actually transform yourself to from nothing to actually have an influence and influence the world. So for me, education is a modern miracle that was not there 150 years ago. And that's in general. And then if you want to include race in it, it was not there 30, 40 years ago for most of black people, African and black people in the country. And so it's something that I think from second year, something I believed from second year of my degree, I believed that I wanted to come back and do education. And so second year was already was in something called the Educational Development Unit, because of my bursary. And I think from second year I was already volunteering to be one of the mentors. At third year I was already applying to be one of the tutors, so I tutored in my second year. And in my postgraduate diploma year I was tutoring. And I think when I was done with that, I stayed at UCT to become an assistant lecturer. So I actually believed in education from the beginning. It's only when I faced my own personal challenges that I didn't come back as quick as I thought I would. But it was always the plan that, the plan coming out of grade 12 was, if you work hard, you're going to become successful. What does success mean? I didn't really think too much about that. But then at UCT, I think during my second year, it's when I got this concept that success means doing something with education and actually influencing others coming up on their journey.
I see. Oh, that's so inspirational. So you mentioned something about you not coming back as quick as you possibly have wanted to come back. So I don't know what challenges, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what challenges you faced that literally delayed your maybe, bouncing back to UCT. I don't know.
Okay, so my journey to become a chartered accountant, if I had mapped it out myself, it was going to be, okay, you're going to graduate your degree with a distinction. That means you have you've proven yourself and you are an intellectual, and then you're going to do well in your postgraduate diploma, and then you're going to stay as an assistant lecturer, and then after that, I had to go to Ernst & Young and do articles to qualify as a chartered accountant. And I struggled with my transition from being a student to being a person in the workplace. And so my articles didn't go smoothly. And basically whatever I visualized as what a lecturer is, which was someone who's like truly gifted technically and someone who's never failed in anything, I felt that I was not that person anymore. And I actually thought that I wouldn't eventually come back as a lecturer. And so I went from Ernst & Young to Pick and Pay Retailers, where I finished my articles there. And whilst I was there and I I was working in a different environment, in a smaller team, and I grew a lot, and I actually got to understand myself and how I deal with pressure a bit better. And it's during Pick and Pay that I remembered again that, okay, this was my plan to start with. And then given that my transition out of UCT to somewhere else didn't work as smoothly as I thought, I decided that I'm actually going to start something. I'm going to go somewhere where I have no expectations, and the people there don't know me, they also don't have expectations. So I started my lecturing career at the University of Western Cape, where it's a very different environment, slightly smaller university, still a very strong, passionate team, and students with dreams and valid dreams like everyone else. And so I think in my 4.5 years at UWC, then I learned a lot and grew a lot very quickly. And I also did my master's in accounting sciences through the University of Pretoria whilst I was at UWC.
Wait. So you went from being someone who's an aspiring CA, you completed your articles
and became a CA.
And became a CA.
Yes.
Shortly after that, you went and became a lecturer at UWC.
Yes. And then
you were already qualified by then, but then you went on and did
my
masters.
Yes.
In a different, how were you attending and how were you balancing your life as a lecturer at UWC and as a student, a master's student at UP?
So one of the known weaknesses with becoming a chartered accountant, the journey itself is very technical, and so you do a lot of courses that are based on accounting standards or some structures around decision making, and you don't do a lot of the expected 20,000 words, 30,000 words, or 50,000 words research reports. And so when you qualify as a CA, you have a known and understood set of competencies, and that set of competencies does not include being a good researcher. And being an academic means you have to do research, you have to understand what you're teaching. And so whilst I was at UWC, I think it's generally understood that if you are teaching chartered accounting students, then most of the lecturers do their masters after having qualified already. So whilst I was there, I then had to search around for good master's programs, and I chose Pretoria because it was a 1-year program. It was very well structured, and it was going to give me the tools to be a researcher and actually start doing research. And so that was actually a good journey. And so basically I sort of stayed away from UCT for a while before I came back at the beginning of last year.
So it was in your missions to come back to UCT? Like it was one of your biggest dreams that one day I'll come back. I was a student here, I was a kid of this university. One day I'll come back and be the head, like the lecturer. Because you're now a senior lecturer, and that's massive.
I don't think so. I think when I went to UWC, I honestly thought that if it works out, I'm going to stay there for as long, even if it's until retirement. And my move into UCT was all about growth and being in a space where I'm going to have a slightly better chance to actually do the research. And I am hoping within the next 2 years to be a registered PhD student. Wow. So to do that, you need to be working in a bigger team where you can be afforded that opportunity. And UCT is as a slightly wealthier university has a chance to actually offer those opportunities. But I think when I joined UWC, my thought was that I was going to do all of these things there. But I mean, life has its own way of working out. So I still look up to a lot of people that I met at UWC, and they're hardworking and they're actually pushing. And UWC actually has at least the accounting department has the fortunate position of to some extent having grown its own timber. So there's some very inspirational personalities there that actually studied there, went and did the articles, went back, and actually working hard with the next generation of students. So I'm always going to be watching that close.
I see. And now, how do you feel that now you've literally transitioned from UWC, you also have UP at the back of you're literally carrying UWC, UP, UCT, and now you're a senior lecturer, you're about to register as a PhD candidate. How does that make you feel? I mean, you've made it in life. How does that make you feel? You're proud, right?
Not well. I am proud of the growth, but it's always about. I mean, I think there's going to be some point where I'm going to be like 58 years old and sitting somewhere drinking a cup of coffee and looking back.
50 years old, can you? I mean, after all those achievements, you haven't reached 50.
At this point, I'm just trying to grow. I've got my own small family that we're all trying to grow and work towards our dreams.
Yeah.
And I mean, something I haven't mentioned is that I actually studied with my wife at UCT, and we both.
Wow! So you studied with your wife in the same year, or
same year?
So you met at UCT as freshers?
Yes.
Okay.
We got to know each other at second year.
Oh, but you guys met in your first year, like you saw her in your first year, and then you literally started, formulating I don't know what to call it, but in your second year.
Yes.
And you grew together all the way till today.
Yes, and so we're watching each other as CAs, and we've got very different journeys.
Wait, she's also a CA.
Yes.
You also a CA. Okay, this is just mind blowing. No, it's literally puzzling because nowadays people are saying for you to make it in life, I mean, abantu besifazane, they're just gonna disturb you, and also. We've been seeing online people saying men are trash. I need to be an independent woman. They talk about everything to a point where by us as kids, we're even scared of literally committing to people because you'd be like, after I've committed to this person, she'll literally hurt me and leave me stranded in the near. So we have trust issues. But you literally trusted a UCT student.
But can I say two things about that? One is going to be very general.
Yes.
Actually, they're both general. So one is, I mean, any two people can decide how they want to be as people. So any two people can decide to make things work, or they decide not to make things work. And so that's up to the people involved. But also on a separate point around the men at trash moment, and I mean, I've already said I was brought up by my grandma, and so I have lots of thoughts about feminism and my position in society as a man, and our positions in society as men. I would go around talking about Sapho, Gwadiso, and and everything is going to be along the lineage of my grandfather, my great grandfather, and there is something wrong that we don't think about there, right? Because Nkuhlu. So where is her in those kwezas do so where is she? So
but can I disturb you for a second? My surname is Jwacha, but I call myself Ushchegulu Maqabaqaba. Indodana kaMadlamini.
Yes.
So my mom is Madlamini. Yeah, as much as she was Ushchegula, but deep down, as much as they're not really recognized out there, but deep down, good indodana kaSibani. So you can proceed.
Yes. So my point there is that so umakhulu wami uMamtolo and then umamazala wakhe umfazi kaGwadiso was Madlezi. But then the further you go back, the way that we've structured our culture and how and our identity and how we see ourselves is that it fades away. The female side of the family line fades away.
So they're more like supporting us to build our
and so I can be like this pride-filled man at UCT. I'm a senior lecturer. And that's what a person sees. They don't see to what extent my wife at home has to actually push me and make me function and actually get to where I want to be. And I'm silly enough to actually have her using my surname as well, whereas she's got a whole history that she could be keeping.
No, but look at it this way. Look at it this way. That's a topic for another day. Right now, you're literally saying, in a setting of a marriage, you'd recommend that we stay with our own surnames. But which surname will then kids say? Because kids do not need to be conflicted.
Well, there's other cultures. There's other cultures where when a person gets married, the couple gets a new surname.
For real?
The whole couple. Yes.
So that means that if I am Jwacha and I get married to
both you and your wife take a new surname, not my wife's surname.
Where does
not
the
your
surname come from?
You have to. I mean, where do names come from? People get named.
Wow.
So you get a new name.
Wow.
But my point there, like I think about these things, and sometimes I talk about them.
Yeah.
It's not like we have a conflict at home.
Yeah.
My wife is comfortable being a Gwadiso,
Yeah.
and my kids are Gwadiso. But it's also I don't want to make it sound like, okay, they're just saying men are trash out there, but
Yeah.
actually they're wrong. Everything is correct.
Yeah.
It's not. Like, the world we are living in
Yeah.
is got more complexity, especially when it comes to identity.
Yeah.
And the history across the genders.
Yeah.
So that's just the truth of it.
Yeah.
And having an almost elegant way of like stating what the problem is does not necessarily mean you've got the solution.
I know.
So I think for me, I find it easy to accept that when it comes to gender equality and feminism in the world, when people lash out, for example, and say men are trash, you should find a way to understand where they come from and what they're talking about, because it's the reality of the world that they grew up in and they live in. That's not saying that I've changed something and I'm changing something. It's just that I'm conscious of it.
I see. I see.
All.
Yeah, so you mentioned something about gender equality and gender equity, men are trash. But thing is, as a kid, when you go online, like as a boy child, I feel like it's wrong to be a boy child, because every day men are trash, men are this, men are this. You feel like it's even wrong to be a man. You know what I'm saying?
Can I compare that
yeah.
sentiment to something that's happening in the States?
In the States, yeah.
Yeah, where they're saying that you should not have slavery in the textbooks because it's going to make the white kids feel bad.
Okay.
You have to live with the reality, right?
Okay.
You have to face reality, and I don't think that. I mean, you can choose to interpret it as saying that all the ladies out there that have fathers and brothers are saying that men should go extinct, or you can say that they're actually lashing out after seeing something that's real in the world. And how you deal with it is up to you. But I don't think that the conversation about feminism and equity should be silenced or pushed to be toned down. I don't think we're at the point now in the world where we think we should actually have a movement to protect men. Like, we'll be fine. We'll be
but
fine.
now, deep down, what I've realized is that with the other gender, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm still young, but with the other gender, they like you when you're understanding and you're pushing for gender equality and everything, but they low-key won't settle for a submissive man. So how do you then strike a balance between being a man that is literally, you know what you want and everything, but still you don't really,
I'm probably not going to answer that because it's quite, as I said, I started off this whole thing by talking about my belief in individuality. So how you carry yourself and how the person that you meet carry themselves, that's a choice that they make. If they get over-influenced by culture and they don't have any sense of individuality, then maybe you met the wrong person. But at the end of the day, we all choose who we want to be and how we want to be. And so you just live with that. And so for me, as I said, I also am trying to be careful not to talk too much about solutions to problems that I'm only just trying to like fully understand.
I see.
And so it is what it is. But I think to like close this whole loop before we go back to talking about careers and growth, for me, it's something that I've been conscious of since probably late high school, early university, that a lot of the weight to get my family where it is, to get me where I am, was pulled by a grandmother who was not educated, and then my mom, who's turning 60 later this year.
Wow.
So I respect their contribution, and I also see how someone actually accepts a calling of, you are going to almost babysit like the Gwadisos or Maduna and just make sure that they are fine and they can carry a legacy. And even if you know that legacy to some extent erases
doesn't really belong to you.
It erases you and your father's legacy to an extent. But I mean, part of it is it just means that maybe that gender at certain levels gets matured quicker than the rest of us who are like trying to own our toys and have our name in the lights. But anyway, back to careers.
By the way, let me just, mention something. You're giving me the vibes of Mr. Sizwe Nxasana. Do you know him?
I know the name. Well, I know him, but I don't know him personally because he's like one of the biggest personalities in our profession.
Yeah, but
And
the way you talk and the way you carry yourself, like from the interactions that you've had, I'm literally sensing a Sizwe Nxasana in you. But yeah, that's a story for another day. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
you listen and you watch to
Yeah.
to the guys that came before you,
Yes.
and also it's amazing how, I mean, the first Black African CA was qualified in the 70s, and the story.
Is that Prof Wiseman Nkuhlu? Or
Yes, and his story. So I had his book for like 3 years before I read it, and then I read it in a week or something. In a week before Christmas, I don't know, something clicked and I had to read the book.
Yeah.
And I find it almost sad how he is known as the first Black African CA, because I feel like that hides so much that he did.
Wow.
In terms of like, when you read the book, firstly, his story was not even necessarily that of disadvantage, because his family had the means for him to study and work and push himself, but he was in a society that didn't allow him to do that. So when he came to UCT, for a moment, I think he came to UCT for PGDA.
Okay.
Yeah, he studied at a few different places, but when he came here, he couldn't stay at a UCT res. And this is in the late 70s, because you needed a permit from whatever race department.
Wait, so he couldn't stay in a UCT res because he was black?
Even if he could afford it, yes.
Because he was black, so he wasn't permitted to stay in a res?
He had a permit so he had to go and get some permits just to study at UCT. And then once he got that permit, it did not include a permit for him to stay at a
So
UCT
he had to look for a private
So he was supposed to
accommodation.
go to wherever the townships are,
Yes.
because that's where Black people were supposed to be at the time.
Wait. So he was excluded from residences because he was black and he didn't have a permit?
Even though he could have afforded to stay there.
Wow.
But I mean, I'm not going to tell the whole story
Wow.
in its full form, because I don't have the book in front of me.
Yes,
But my
yes.
point is that his story of his own
It's
personal
been narrowed.
struggle is very narrow in terms of like focusing on just, oh yeah, he was the first Black person to do
Yes,
this.
yes.
Because I think for me, up until I read the book, I had that question mark that said, so what did he do? Because it feels like why is that such a big achievement?
Yes.
And then you hear that actually the next 5 Black African CAs actually came through his hands one way or the other.
Yeah, because there's this organization, I think it's Abasa. It's,
he actually started, so the University of Transkei ended up starting a department of accounting under his leadership.
For real?
Yes.
Wow.
And so when you talk about
wow.
when you talk about, for example, Umamu Kobodo, who's also very well celebrated and as the Black first female to be a CA, they actually were supported by him in terms of his start. So like it's like, why are we talking about him being the first to do something when he's done so much?
Because I was thinking to myself, Ubabu Sizwe Nxasana is so successful. Why is he praising Prof Wiseman Nkuhlu this much? And they're even like, Sizwe Nxasana would literally travel to other countries, to other provinces, because he's generally based in Joburg, and conduct lectures on Prof Wiseman. I was like, what has this person done such that Sizwe Nxasana respects him so much?
No, I feel like, I mean, I haven't found a nice short package of his story, but I feel like it's almost wrong to say that he was the first Black African CA, full stop. There's so much that's being hidden there. And so, and that first group of people, what they did for professionalism in general, beyond just a chartered accountant, to actually be the first group to qualify in that profession, to push their way into professional boardrooms and actually do work that then opened the way, the path for some of us who were just being born when they were they were starting off in their professions. Great respect to them. And then actually then I know when I joined UCT, one of the conversations we're having about like how to plan a research career and where to go. Someone was saying that you must read widely and you must remember that you need to walk in the shoulders of giants. And that then makes sense when you read some of the stories of the people that came before us because what they did and what they needed to do to get to where they are does make them giants. And if you
Yeah.
accept that you walk in the shoulders of giants, then you know that your challenge is not as big as theirs. They really paved the way. They paved the way. Yeah.
Imagine from being excluded. I can only imagine, when you're not a resident, even staying in a private accommodation, you feel like you're low-key excluded from the university.
Yeah.
I mean, you're staying in a township. Every day you have to pay for transport to come to university.
I don't know if he actually stayed in a township, but he did make a point of the fact that he had issues with accommodation when he came to UCT.
Yes.
Again, not because he couldn't afford it, not because he didn't have the plans and the funding, but because he was not supposed to be in places that are reserved for white people in the country. And that story, and part of it was actually disturbed by the transition into democracy, in that some of the trajectories that people like Jake Schrevel and Professor Wiseman, Nkuhlu, like some of the journeys that they had gone onto in terms of where they were going with their careers, they quickly got pulled into Nelson Mandela's first administration, and they basically, they still had some level of control over where their careers were going, but they were basically now part of this more bigger project that kind of moved them away from whatever they did to start with. So Jake Schrevel I mentioned because his story is linked to UWC, and Professor Nkuhlu, his story is linked to Walter Sisulu University and UNITRA in the Eastern Cape. And you're talking about someone who basically starts a department of accounting, gets it growing, and when they get their first people to be qualified, I think within like 7 to 10 years, freedom comes around, and now he has to go into departments of finance or trade and industry, or like some government level involvement and being advisors, and then if it feels like, when you read the book, it feels like the 90s for people that were starting their professional careers at UWC or young black professionals in the early 90s. It feels like the 90s just went by like that, because it was let's just start something new from scratch,
and just erase whatever.
And so then you have to give them credit for actually starting the administration, and you can't blame them for if things didn't go as well as they would have hoped. I see.
Maybe last question, because I'm seeing that the time I booked you for is literally elapsing. So you went to academia. There is this narrative which says, if you want to be poor, go to academia. If you want to be married, go to industry. So how did you work around that? And also, where are you aspiring to be in the next 10 years? Because I think you are a future leader. From the interactions that we just had, I saw a leader in you. And I can tell that if the nation was to be led by people who have your mentality, it will be literally in good hands. But where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? And also, how did you literally remain firm and be like, I'm going to be in academia, even if they say there's no money in academia? And is that really true that there's no money in academia?
Is the money in academia? It really depends on the person and the angle that they look at things at. To be honest, am I gonna get shot for saying this? UCT does pay well.
Okay, come and be a lecturer at UCT.
UCT does pay well. Yes, there's conversations happening right now about around the academic union, because people are trying to. You have this combination of two things that sound like they're in contradiction. One is a lot of universities are struggling to convert chartered accountants from corporate world into academia because a lot of the times they have to take a pay cut just to get started, and then they have to research just to keep growing. So if I want to ever be a professor in my lifetime, I have to get that PhD. And some of that is actually very hard work, and you have to push yourself. And also, technically being a professor is almost a ceiling in itself, whereas there's some guys that are studied with that will end up being in the top 40 listed company as a senior manager or CFO that are going to be making more than 2 or 3 million rand a year. So it's not easy to consider like where you want to be. But for me personally, the story that I tell is that even though I grew up as a very motivated person without too much of a target, like I told myself, if I work hard, I'm going to get somewhere. As I grew to become an adult, I got to a point where I was saying that if I don't care about something, like inherently, if I don't consciously think that something matters, then I'm going to struggle to do well in it. So the education project is something that I care really deeply about. So even if it was not paying sufficiently, I'll stick with it, because I feel like, as I said, I believe that even though people respect education, the power of education as a modern miracle that can transform people's lives is something that I still believe is underrated. I think education is a solid. It's like, I know it's expensive, but it's still the cheapest lotto ticket out there. It's really amazing to actually be able. Just to net out on things, I mentioned America. I was watching or listening to, and this is not going to translate to most people, but there's a musical called Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton was the first. Okay, just translate and say that he was the first finance minister of a free America, and his story was made into a musical which includes like all sorts of genres of hip hop and normal music of the modern day, and it became a big deal in America, and because it uses black actors, even though it's telling the story of the founders of America, who were all white, the founding fathers. But key to that story, but like forget all of the other facts, but key to that story was the fact that it was a miracle that a person like Alexander Hamilton, who was born on some island near Jamaica or somewhere in the Caribbean, studied during a time where many people didn't. It's actually related to accounting, because he studied, he became a clerk, and he was doing book work that's related to ships that were sailing by, and with that work, people got to recognize his intellectual ability, and that got him from the Caribbean to America, where he then joined in the fight for the freedom of America. And then eventually he was very close to becoming he would have been one of the first 2 or 3 presidents of America, had he not made some mistakes and got himself shot. But the point is that the fact that in a world where previously you would have to go fight, and you would have to people would lose their lives, and people would have absolutely no opportunities to get into certain spaces, but you are living in a world where you can take your pen and paper, a textbook that's written by I know we always talk about how sometimes the teachers are not giving us what we need, but you've got a textbook that's got a professor's name somewhere in the cover. You can teach yourself to the extent that the environment that you are in does not fully teach you. You can open your textbook, teach yourself, build yourself to something that is bigger than anyone else can dream of, and you can get to the stars, you can get to the moon out of your own hard work, sitting in your room, as long as you've got a textbook and a pen and a paper. That's it. So I think education is a modern miracle that we underrate. Like, if you are somewhere now between, let's say, 8 years and 20 years old, most of your future is actually in your hands more than you think. Like, you don't need anyone's help.
I see. No, I feel like we deeply need a part 2, because I have some questions, but due to time, thank you so much, guys, for watching this inspirational talk. And do leave comments by the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like our videos. Till next time, you can just, say bye or something, whatever is in your mind at the
moment. All the best with your studies, guys. Keep working, and best of luck. See you at UCT or UWC or the University of Pretoria or Walter Sisulu, wherever. Let's keep moving.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Subscribe for more.